Two middle-aged guys try to work it all out. Two middle-aged guys try to work it all out. Two middle-aged guys try to work it all out.
Hey everybody, I can't hear the theme song, but I know I love it. Welcome, I'm Dave, and my friend Chris. Yeah, I was speaking for him.
Oh, you got it this time. Okay.
Sorry. I also order for him at restaurants. It's very weird.
You know, mostly you do a good job.
But I make him pay, so it gets real weird. And we're here. We're two middle-aged guys, and we're trying to work it all out. We got a problem today that we're gonna work out. I think it'll lead to some very interesting conversation. But before we get into that, I just wanted to see how you're doing today, Chris.
I'm doing well, doing good. It's been a busy week with work and family and everything, but still breathing, still alive. Happy to be here. Happy to take a few hours off to podcast and not worry about everything else going on. So that is good.
Well, I'm glad you're alive, but I don't want to date us too much. But today, someone very special, important, passed away.
Oh, I may have missed this.
Jerry Springer died.
Did he really?
And he was beaten to death by a chair. No, He had pancreatic cancer. Paternity test went bad. He was beaten to death by the bald guy who always stood there. He passed away today.
I did not see that.
The interesting thing was I grew up not watching Jerry Springer, but he was present, right? I can remember many times going to places that had the TV on during the day, and it seemed like he was always on. I mean, he produced thousands of hours of content. He was most recently doing a podcast.
I did not know that.
Yes, I never listened to it, and I wouldn't, but I actually, very interesting, looked into his background. He was a legitimate, he was the mayor of Cincinnati. He worked before that. He worked for in the RFK campaign, or for one of his something. I don't know if his campaign or something to do with RFK. And he was the mayor of Cincinnati. He was a journalist. He won some local Emmys. He was, and then he got into what that they call trash TV that he created. But
yeah, I was gonna say I thought he started even with a legitimate talk show. Wasn't he trying to be like an Oprah-esque?
Right? Think about all of those guys, right? That did that. It all went weird. Maury Povich.
Yep.
Geraldo Rivera, who's a fascinating and hilarious character. But yeah, it all kind of got weird. But Springer just sort of, he had the weirdest, right? You could not outdo him. There was always some craziness going on. But I never really watched it other than when it was just there. And it seemed to be there a lot. You'd see it at lunch, you'd see it at dinner. And this was, pre-streaming days. So.
Well, I think his show ran from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m.
It was a very long show. I can't imagine, IKEA was delivering by the truckload new chairs. Never stopped. It was, as he passed away, 79, pancreatic cancer. I hope that the Springer family, if they're listening, I hope that we can bring them a little joy today with this discussion.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that. That is sad.
Yep.
Rest in peace, Mr. Springer.
Yeah. So before we get started, I would like to, I want to have a challenge Chris with something. Our listeners may be wondering, are these people we should trust? Are these people we should listen to? Are they, are their tastes just so far removed from ours that maybe it doesn't matter? So I'm just going to throw a few things at you and get you to respond. Things that maybe are outside of what we would normally talk about. And let's just see how this goes. So, Chris,
this is questions. I like or don't like, or what?
It's sort of, kind of, right?
Okay,
and the questions we'll get it. But I call this, and we might come up with a new name for this because I don't like this name. I wrote down several. I call this, Can You Trust Us?
Okay.
And I don't know the answer to that.
I'm ready to prove trustworthy.
Okay.
What do we got?
Have you attempted, I want an honest answer here. Have you attempted to read James Joyce's Ulysses at any point in your life?
Yes, I have.
I say attempt or finished?
Attempt.
Okay. Did you get far enough into it that you could return it to Amazon or as an ebook? I would imagine that's Amazon's most returned ebook.
I still own it.
Okay. Oh.
And someday I'm going to get through it someday.
Yeah.
But no, that's a challenge. And for some reason, my mind always lumps that with David Foster Wallace's Infinite Jest.
Yes.
Which is another book that I have tried and failed to get through. Mainly because when I read far enough to realize, oh, this is about tennis, I got really disappointed.
Yeah, I've never attempted to read either of those. I have kind of this thought that something is that inaccessible that I kind of lose interest because it I don't know, it just doesn't feel very rewarding to me at the end. It feels kind of hollow or vain, and I think that Ulysses might actually be rewarding, whereas from what I know about Infinite Jest, I feel like I would be disappointed.
So I feel like both of them have merit and have reward at the end, but I have to get to the end.
Yep.
And I so far have not succeeded on either of those novels.
What I've read about Ulysses, and we've lost every listener, is that, but I will say this, is that you should, it's like, to prepare to read it, you need like to have like an English, go through like what you would do for like an English literature type degree, right? That's the kind of background you need. So, all right, folks, you can start. We're no longer talking about Ulysses, but that's where Chris is, right? What smartphone are you currently carrying? This I work where I want to say this where I work. When we introduce new people, we always ask this question because it's like it puts you into the appropriate camp.
Fair enough. I am carrying a Google Pixel 4a.
All right.
Which is kind of a budget phone in their line, but I'm fine with that. I do not need the latest and greatest cell phone. I just need a cell phone that makes a call and sends a text. And most of the time, I wish it didn't do either of those things.
Yeah.
So,
It's the magic phone. Did you ever carry a BlackBerry?
no, never did.
Okay. All right. Have you ever written and posted fan fiction?
No.
Okay, we're gonna stop right there. We're gonna stop with that one. Adam Sandler, what do you think?
Oh, golly, that's a tough one. He has done things that I've found funny in the past. He is not a consistent hitter for me. If we were gonna give him a batting average, I'd say maybe like a 0.15 batting average. But I do appreciate some things that he's done. When he won the Mark Twain Prize for Comedy, and I heard it was Adam Sandler, I was like, whoa, weird choice. But hearing everybody come out and, you know, how they all come out and they do like a funny monologue, but really it's a heartfelt thing.
Yeah.
Hearing everybody talk about him made me respect him more, hononestly.
No, he's personally, you only hear good things about him. Very kind to everyone. And we talked about Norm Macdonald in the previous episode, that he would give Norm work in movies. He would often cut Norm out, but it was a way to help him, you know, continue to have work. And they just liked him around the set. Yeah. The movie Grown Ups, Norm had a character that was in it significantly, and they cut out all but one brief shot of Norm's character, but you can watch all of the scenes. They kind of, it was the funniest. They made a mistake. They should have just made the movie about Norm Macdonald's character. Yeah. So Adam Sandler, I'll say this. Yeah, the batting average thing is a great analogy. He had a great rookie season, and then the rest of the career was just kind of. He was just happy with what he had. He became content, and but he still built an incredible empire of all this stuff. So good for him. The Happy Madison empire. Good for Adam Sandler. We agree actually quite a lot on that. I do think the Mark Twain Award is odd, but I don't find Mark Twain particularly funny. So Sandler I prefer.
Twain, I don't know. He's pretty funny.
Yeah,
if you read some of his essays.
I guess I should read more of Twain. I should read the essays. I do think he, from Ulysses to Mark Twain. I do. From what I understand, he basically invented stand-up comedy on kind of like not intentionally. He just ended up that way because he needed money, so he did talking tours and So all right. Fine, I'm wrong. Mark Twain is awesome. Okay, well, the last, second to last one, celebrity that you would have dinner with, like to have dinner with.
I'd be thrilled to have dinner with Bono. I think that would be a fascinating conversation. So that he'd be my first choice.
Yeah, that's a good choice. I hope he'd stay sober enough for the conversation.
I think he's mellowed in his older years a little bit.
Yeah. I hope so. I hope for his liver's sake. Really, he's 60 years old now, right?
But I mean, you know, he had that heart blip in 2016 or whatever. But,
and he almost died on the bike.
I don't know if he almost died.
No, I read an article about the surgeon who did this.
Really?
Thing. Yeah, that it was pretty serious, and
I knew it was pretty serious, and like it required some reconstruction, but.
Yep, there was a brain hemorrhaging. I think
really?
Maybe I don't know. Maybe I made that up.
Wow,
could have been someone else. Last question. When it comes to your media in your life, do you want it to be digital or physical? Don't answer that.
Oh.
That's what we're gonna. I think we should turn that into the episode. That's spontaneous.
Okay, yeah, I was not prepared for this at all. That's not true.
That's true. You weren't.
I have a pile of notes in my lap.
All right, not to monopolize the conversation, but I'd like for us to dive deep into how we live our lives in this modern day. When you have a choice to have almost nothing physical, nothing tangible or on paper, and that goes through our entertainment, our education, our finances, memories. Right? You can put it in, as the kids would say, they're always talking about the cloud. They won't shut up about the cloud. But you can do that, right? And there's some pretty serious implications to that. And I'd like to dive deep on that, Chris. And before we do that, I have one thing I think this quote has been with me for years. And when I do anything innovation related, I always talk about this to, whether it's with my peers or my staff at my professional work. I manage a Taco Bell, and we're always trying to innovate on how we get the burritos wrapped right. This is a quote that I love. New York Times, in an interview in 2002, David Bowie said this: "Music itself is going to become like running water or electricity." That was in 2002. He predicted, incredibly, predicted the end of physical media, right, as being the primary way to consume these things. And it would be like a utility, which it is, right? My Amazon Music Unlimited service is how music gets delivered. I'm showing my hand a bit. He also talked about, interestingly enough, he said in 10 years, it was in 2002, he didn't believe copyright would exist, but that didn't happen.
We may be better off if he had been right in that regard.
Interestingly enough, but it was interesting, and a lot of forethought there that was printed in a New York Times article. I actually remembered it being in a David Letterman interview, and when I read it in the New York, when I went back to read it, I was like, that was also in David Letterman. I went back to his David Letterman appearances. But I think it's kind of an amazing thing that people could have that kind of foresight, especially the guy who was most well known for having big red hair, wearing tights, and pretending to be an alien.
Yeah, but he was very reticent, and then not only that, but he had his own friggin' ISP. I mean, if that's
BowieNet,
if that's not forward thinking in the late 90s, I don't know what is.
It's weird though. I remember reading the BowieNet thing and saying, I would have an uncensored internet. I was like, I don't want uncensored. I want my internet to be extremely censored. I can go to one website. I can go to Deseret News. That's it. I can do.
It's the only one.
I'm locked into Deseret News. Am I saying that right, Deseret?
Yeah, you are.
All right.
Yeah.
Practicing.
But no, that's my one internet regret, was that I never signed up for BowieNet.
It was 1995.
I would have loved to have had a BowieNet email address. I don't know if it's still
it is
still
defunct,
active.
I believe.
It
is defunct. I think it ended like 2015 or something. I mean, it didn't dial up.
No, sure, but I was hoping someone kept the email server.
They did for a while, and maybe it is still around. I haven't been there in the website, for a while. It's not something I visit regularly.
Sure.
It's okay. All right. This is an interesting conversation. I like the prescience, right, of that. And I think it frames it up, that it represents where we are today, that, you can, everything is out there to be borrowed for the moment.
And to his point, everything is a service, or it's a subscription. Yep. There's no more buying piecemeal with virtually anything. It's all just a giant hose that you turn on and hope that you can sort through.
Yep. So let's talk about where this began, right? And I'm sure that this is not like an academic study of it, and I'm sure that other people would have different opinions. But for me, this began in 1999 with Napster, right? When Napster came out, all of a sudden, all the music you wanted was out there on this sort of hybrid mesh, very complex but very cool system where you could go out and download songs, right? And you did it through dial-up. You'd get a song in about 45 minutes. And that's, you did it on broadband, and you would get a song in a minute. Yeah. It was mind-blowing.
So for me, it started a little bit earlier, because I just liked to play with technology and see what I could do. And so I remember digging through my father's record collection and finding, old records that I was interested in that I wanted to listen to, but being frustrated that I would have to put it on the turntable, needle, do the whole thing. And so I figured out that my sound card on my PC had an in port. And so I rigged the record player to go into my sound card and saved these records as WAV files, which meant with hard drives at that time, I could have like one record at a time on my hard drive.
It was 94 megabytes for a 1 minute sample.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was doing that as a teen just to get around a problem that I was perceiving. And then Napster hit and I was like, I was doing this years ago. I just didn't have the compression.
Yep. The compression and the ability to share it. Right. That was sort of the thing, right? It was like this community where people, shared their stuff, and there were centralized servers that managed it. It wasn't this, peer-to-peer connection thing, which came later. But, and I remember it just downloading songs, so many songs, and I still have somewhere all of those songs backed up.
Do you really?
I do. And I think it's actually maybe an SD card that I have plugged into a little micro PC over here. But, I never listened to them. And in fact, at some point I may just get rid of them because I have to admit, I didn't own every album I downloaded. There's 2 or 3 songs there I didn't own the rights to, 2 or 3,000 songs maybe. But no, it came out and it was incredible. And there was the backlash was horrible, right? And I think that sort of the most prominent artist, and you may have a different memory of this, but was Metallica. Was extremely critical of the theft, and rightly so for the most part. But I feel like they missed something. A lot of people missed something that Bowie understood just a few years later, that people weren't stealing to steal. They were stealing because it's how they wanted to get their music.
Right. And you have to credit Steve Jobs for kind of putting those puzzle pieces together as well, because when he released, even though he was charging and Napster was completely free, even though iTunes was charging 99 cents a song, it was just as easy, arguably easier than Napster. You go in there, you pick your song, and people were willing to pay the money. So I completely agree. It was never about theft. It was never about piracy. It was about, this is a new transportation method.
Yep. So the right thing is respond to it. Right. And then from Napster, then you had the Nutella, not Nutella, not the hazelnut cream. Yeah, the
Nutella
network.
File sharing. Hazelnut
it was delicious. That came out right afterwards, right? You remember the LimeWire, BearShare, a cesspool of files, fake stuff.
Kazaa.
Oh yeah, Kazaa. I tried all those, and shortly thereafter, BitTorrent, which is stuck around, right? Yes. BitTorrent is very durable. And it's still here, whereas the others now, Napster is long dead. It tried to go legitimate and died. It couldn't compete with Apple. It was also tarnished by, the industry did not wish to work for them because they were the thieves.
Exactly.
Right? Mistake, because I think that they were, the guy who invented Napster was pretty smart. But yeah, the industry, you had technology moving very fast, the industry struggling to keep up. I remember buying songs. My personal place to buy songs was Walmart. I bought a lot on Walmart. I did not have Apple devices. Yeah. So you had these things going on. You had Napster, Nutella, BitTorrent, and I didn't start using BitTorrent for years, and certainly not even for music. But at a certain point, though, it did become easier to buy them. Right? Walmart had them. Had the songs you could buy. Apple had them. There was other retailers. But when did you first get... We would download them on our hard drive, right? And then I remember downloading them on our hard drive and then burning a CD with them so that you could play it in the car.
Right.
But, that was still... That was not fully realizing the technology. When did you get your first MP3 player?
This will surprise nobody who's listened to our podcast so far. It was when the U2 special edition iPod came out. And so not only did I have to have that because it was black with the red circle for
the signatures on the back. It was
exactly. Yeah. But also it came with the digital box set of U2's catalog. So, I mean, I was all on board with that. That was my Christmas present, whatever year that was. And I used that thing until it gave up the ghost.
I think they're valuable now, actually. They're collector's items.
Any iPod is, but what's funny is there's like no iPod that functions without severe work to it. Like they were never apparently built to last.
Yeah, well, it was the physical hard drive in it that just those did not keep up, right?
Right.
I don't remember when they went to solid state. It was towards the end of the life of the iPod.
Nano was the first solid state.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and especially the amount we all used our iPods. I mean, that was never good for a mechanical hard drive.
Well, sure. Yeah, no. And they did get used. Constant disk spinning. My first was, I don't know if it was a solid state or not. It was 8 gigs, so I guess it could have been. That I purchased in 2004. I don't remember what brand it was. It was, it had a full color screen. It's actually quite nice. I did not have Apple products, so I skewed that. I was not a part of the Apple ecosystem at that point, so I did not go with one of those. But I bought it at, I love this, Circuit City.
Yeah.
And I loved going to Circuit City. I have very fond memories of that place. And that sort of changed my relation. That changed my relationship with music and how I transport it completely. And at that point, CDs stopped being purchased and it started to go digital. And I would say that purchase of that first MP3 player opened things up for me. And I realized you can get your music legitimately.
Yeah.
And you can take it anywhere you want to go. And you can plug it into the aux on your car. CDs, no longer were important.
I'm going to surprise you because it was that iPod, which I love dearly. I loved having virtually everything I owned in my pocket. That was fantastic. But that made me double down on CDs because there was an audible difference in quality.
Oh boy,
I know.
I remember.
But here's the thing.
You could hear the jagginess.
No.
Could you hear the jagginess?
I'm not.
Magic ears.
I'm not getting into kilobits. I'm not getting into formats. I'm not doing that. What it comes down to me for is it's the DAC, the digital to audio converter. Yeah. The quality of the DAC that I had in home systems, the quality of the DAC that I had even in portable CD players. I mean, back when portable CD players were the thing.
Oh yeah,
those were amazing.
Yep.
And then the DACs they stick in MP3 players, the DACs they stick in phones, I can hear a difference. And I'm not like crazy religious about it. I'm not telling you everything's got to be on vinyl. I'm not one of those guys. But I do prefer, if I'm at home and I'm listening to music, it's from a CD. And if I'm out in my car, it's digital all day long.
Interesting. Well, let's keep going. Let's not show our hands too much, although I think the division is quite obvious. And I remember having an argument not an argument, kind of sort of an argument, in about 2002 between two musicians. And I was in the middle of it. I observed an argument between two musicians, and one who had all his music was digital, the other one who vinyl, right? I mean, that was the sort of, and they were both good musicians, and one was much better than the other. They were both, good, right? Mm-hmm. Far greater than me. One was a vocalist and the other was a vocalist and played guitar. But the argument was, back and forth and the jagginess. Oh, I can hear the jagginess now. I mean, you just invented that. And I could have cared less, right? I realized that as much as I did like the sound quality, that my equipment was not up to the standards where I could necessarily hear it. So I appreciated the convenience.
Absolutely. And it's huge. And you could make the argument, well, Chris, talking about your DACs, you could get a DAC that would blow anything out of the water and plug it into your PC. Absolutely right. But I, for reasons that I'm sure we'll get into here in a little bit, I do like the physical act of choosing a CD from the shelf, pulling it out of its case. There's something to that for me.
The tactile response is important. I'll get to something in a minute, but there's something about buying it and unpackaging it. I think that's true. But YouTube is full of unpackaging videos, unboxing videos, right? There's obviously something to it, and it's real, and there's like a surprise, even though you know exactly what you're getting. I still don't know why. I mean, even I kind of enjoy watching them, kind of, right? It's hard to explain why they're interesting. But so, music, okay, it was starting to change the landscape of how you buy music, right? The CD section in stores is getting, shrinking, and it does not exist anymore. CDs, gosh, I've been to Walmart. I don't even know if they actually sell a few of them, right? And
Yeah, very, very few.
they sell as much vinyl, it
Probably
seems,
more.
these days,
Yeah.
right? So the next thing you got to step to is how we consume, movies and television. So I think you could remember a time, and I know I certainly can, when I had a wooden shelf that had proudly displayed my VHS collection, and proudly look, I have 6 widescreen movies, which on my 27-inch TV become very, very small. And everyone thinks they're broken.
But we paid extra.
We paid extra because we needed the Fifth Element VHS in widescreen. I actually, Dune, I believe I had that. I can't remember the ones I had. Maybe the Fifth Element. That would have been at the very end of VHS.
Yeah, I know Blade Runner in widescreen was
Blade Runner in widescreen
for me.
Yep, I had that one. I had Dune. So you got this VHS collection. Look at it, and then all of a sudden things go digital. And you get the DVD. Now I know that somebody's listening and saying, "Hey, what about Laserdisc?" We're not going to talk about Laserdisc. Actually, I will. I'm going to tell a very brief and hilarious story, if I may. I knew a fellow, if he's listening, hi, who was a member of the Columbia House Laserdisc Club, and he was collecting Laserdiscs for years. And he did not have a Laserdisc player, and he was investing. He wanted to get his library very large, that he could get a Laserdisc player to enjoy it. And the DVD came out, and the look on his face, he was brave. He tried to explain that Laserdisc was the lasting, durable format. And then he was like, okay, I'll get one of those one that plays both DVD and Laserdisc. And he was trying to rationalize and justify because he had invested so many years, and he didn't get to really enjoy it. And I just think that's you don't learn anything from that story. It's just funny.
Did this gentleman work the same place we did?
He did. Yes, he did.
I'm gonna continue your story.
Oh, God. Okay. I was not intending this, but I'm very excited.
I purchased his Laserdisc and collection from him.
No.
And I still have it to this
day.
My
gosh. That was a no, folks. If you are listening, not planned. That's awesome.
Yeah. No, I know exactly
Did
what you're talking
he
about.
Tell the story in a sad way, or like I was telling it, or was it self-deprecating?
He had accepted it. Yeah, and part of the deal was we made a deal for the player and the Laserdiscs, but I had to not only pay for the Laserdisc and the player, I had to replace all the Laserdiscs he had with DVDs so that he would not lose the library.
Goodness. Wow.
He actually did not have that many Laserdiscs.
Yeah, he made it sound, and honestly, I never saw it. I was only over his house a few times. He made it sound like he had like the Library of Congress level.
No, but the important thing was he had the Star Wars trilogy.
Yes, and so you could watch that so you got the player. What was the, not to get too technical, what kind of video output did that have? Was it S-video?
No, it's only analog. It's
only analog, so it didn't even have
composite.
Okay, all right. Yeah. I knew it was an analog format, but I thought that it did have...
There are some players that have S-video, but you can never get higher than S-video out of a Laserdisc.
Wow. Oh, my gosh. That's awesome. I'm very happy that I mentioned that. But, so you had that, right? Laserdisc, it is what it is. And then you go digital, and all of a sudden VHS, I mean, the switch is night and day, right? It's 8-track to CD.
It is.
It is, you no longer have to rewind. No longer have to rewind is the selling point for everybody. I mean, it was, every demographic, right, who said, I do not want to rewind my VHS. It did not matter about the video quality, the audio quality, not having to rewind, won the day. Many folks, when they got their DVDs, were very confused why where there was black bars in the bottom and top, and we've thankfully moved on from that when somebody stretched out televisions. But it revolutionized things, and then the VHS shelf, you didn't have to get rid of it because you could put DVDs on it, and you're still proudly displaying them, right? It's a thing. And I remember for many years, my lovely long-suffering wife would put up with me proudly displaying, that I owned a couple Jean-Claude Van Damme movies on DVD, along with The Fifth Element. It's still there, right? It turned the VHS. It was the miracle of The Fifth Element. If I could perform 4 more miracles, I'd become a Catholic saint.
Yeah, but just the one in your pocket. That's pretty good.
I got to keep that one. But it's so that it's still out there, right? And then now Netflix, right, is mailing you DVDs, and the whole, and I don't want to get into this because at some point I think we're going to talk about this. There's the whole video store experience, right? There's all this stuff that's going on with movies. It's a very social thing, right? So you go to the movies, you have that community experience, but then you go to the video store and you have that, and you can look at the employee recommendations. What are they recommending? And I want them to like me. I don't know who they are. He's a high school student.
I got Jimmy's recommendation.
Yeah, I don't. Yes. I remember you and I had a local. I don't want to get too much into this. We got it, but we did have a local video store that we.
It was the best.
It was the best. But at some point we'll talk, folks. I know you can't wait, but you're going to have to. So we had that experience, and here, Netflix is mailing the DVDs out, which was great. I was on the 3, DVD plan.
Yep.
I stopped buying a lot of movies. Right at that point, I was able to buy what I loved.
Yep.
But, try a lot of stuff and not go to the video store, not incur late fines, right? That was the big thing that there were several video stores I was not allowed back in because we had incurred late fines on. And I still wonder, like Blockbuster's got us, just in case they come back, they can enough capital from my late fines, they can start up again. So then Netflix in 2007 started to do streaming, right? It was a neat experiment, and they had about 1,000 movies you could watch from your PC, which was stupid.
And they were all bad.
I don't even remember. You know what? I kind of remember that, and you're right. There was nothing of particular value. I think like you could watch like a Zach Galifianakis stand-up show, right? There's the Zach him at the Red Onion, I think, in San Francisco. There's very little, and it was stupid because no one wanted to sit in front of their computer. The whole media PC idea did not really exist. I mean, you had to be very nerdy to do that, right? So it wasn't out there. But it wasn't. I say it was stupid. It was actually brilliant because it tested the streaming concept and was the launching point for their set-top box.
Yep.
And
which was Roku first.
Which was
right?
Roku, and I was an early adopter. I had that first square guy. I bet you did too.
I did not.
Oh, you didn't? All right,
No.
so I had that first one, this square box, and it was not huge at the time either. I remember like, whoa, this is, a third of the size of my DVD player. It was, I believe, I can't remember. It was not Roku branded Roku. I can't say it. I've always said it wrong, branded, but it had, the basic interface, and at that point, Netflix was updating constantly, and I remember my wife saying, we bought this, there's nothing to watch on here. And she was exactly right. But I was like, this is cool. This is what I've been hoping for, right? This whole, this promise of the information superhighway that you can go out and grab whatever you want and watch it at any time. And then that functionality started to be built into your DVD players. Mm-hmm. And so I got a DVD player that did that, and started to go that way. Was that how you first experienced
video game consoles? For me.
Video game consoles,
yeah, because they got on those very quickly. Whether it was PS3, Xbox 360, or even the Wii, which had a little CD that you had to put into the Wii to get the functionality. So that was my dip of the toe into Netflix streaming.
The Wii's Netflix interface was actually really good.
It was,
and pleasurable to use with the Wii mode. It was fun, and we did use that for a little bit. But I had got into high definition television. I bought a Hitachi rear projection widescreen HD TV. And it was our first one, and so I wanted to have, the Bose sound system. I wanted, so we went from the Wii. We didn't use that. So I don't remember. I think we actually used an Xbox, I think. I had a modded Xbox, so you were able to do some things. But anyways, and then I we got into the actual Roku set-top boxes, which were outstanding, and I still use Roku to the entire house to this day. The entire house uses it.
Same here.
I do wish Apple TV. There's a handful of things that if it could do, I would. Some apps I'd switch to that. But that's neither here nor there, right? Because I think how you get it. It's interesting, but how you get it's a little less important for me. Is do you put all your eggs in a single basket?
Oh no, you can't.
Well, some people do in this room.
Really?
I know a guy that is me. So yeah, I did. Right. So Vudu is the service that came out for me. Right.
Okay.
Not Hulu.
No.
Hulu's fine. Vudu came out, and they started to, you'd buy something and you'd get a little coupon. Here's a code. You can get it digitally. And What is this? I tossed it away. I don't care. I've got the DVD. I don't need it digitally. And if I want it, I want something digitally, I'll watch it when it comes out on Netflix, right? Because things actually were coming out on it at that point. And then a good friend of ours said, you don't just toss those away. Use them. Use those little codes and redeem it online. And I tried it. And then I tried it some more. And then they had disc to digital. And you could take your discs to Walmart, and for $5, they would give you a digital code. And you didn't trade it in, right? You got to keep your discs. But they would say, okay, since you already bought the physical media, you can now have a digital copy. And it was like we were being trained to rely on the digital world. And then it went from, I've got streaming, I've got a nice physical collection, and I've got some things digitally. And I bought a few things, but mostly it's just things I've already got physically. So it's a little bit more convenient I get rid of all of my physical stuff and everything is digital. It happened very quickly for me. Like I would say within the course of 3 months, I liquidated my physical library and went entirely digital into one basket that is called Vudu. And that's how I got all of my entertainment. And the rapidity of it was kind of shocking. My wife was so grateful because all of a sudden I had no hideous DVDs, no ridiculous, unstained wood stands which were made of dowel rods and a couple pieces of wood, right? I know I know you could see it, right? Anybody who bought furniture between 1996 and 2008 knows those DVDs and VHS stands that were just absolutely hideous. Yeah, those wooden ones. So that was gone, disappeared. And replaced with a movie collection that's set right next to your streaming stuff in whatever form that you were, whatever device you were using to access that, which is at that point, it was just all Roku for us.
So thinking about this timeline in my head, how did you feel having gone all into Vudu and then hearing Vudu's being sold to Walmart?
Well, that happened a few years later.
Before.
Yeah, I bought everything way before Vudu. Walmart sold to Walmart. I was getting ahead. I was thinking about the other sale.
Yes, you are getting ahead.
Flickster.
Yes.
Different story. How did I feel? I was perfectly fine with it because
Walmart, it was Walmart.
Because Walmart did it right.
Okay.
I listen. I'm not. Walmart's fine with me. I am not an anti-Walmart person. I'm in there every day.
I mean, regardless, they've got the infrastructure. They've got the money.
Infrastructure.
Right.
Yeah, they did that whole. You buy it, you can show your receipt, and
exactly. So now, how do you feel when it's sold to Flickster?
I do not particularly. I'm fairly neutral on Flickster. What they did, though, and I was not affected by this, but they actually removed a lot of content from people's library that they suspected they got through ways that violated Vudu's terms of service. So let me explain. So, and this actually, I think, crystallizes the concern with being all digital. So Vudu, very successful service under Walmart. Lots of ways to get content. They had that. I don't remember the name of the. I should have looked up and written down the service where you could you bought a DVD and they would put a code on the receipt and you could go put it into Vudu and then you get it digitally. Right. It really simplified that. Or it would do it automatically if you paid with Walmart Pay. It had this thing, and what people would do is they'd get those codes and then they'd sell them online. It actually became a little bit of a problem, and when Flickster bought it, they developed an algorithm to find out, did you get your content in a way that violated the terms of service, which meant, did you buy somebody's code that they bought a DVD, put their DVD on the shelf, and then they put their code on eBay, or there was a guy running a video store who would take everything and sell the codes online. There was a couple of those code sales, and there was also apparently some way to crack them and generate them. I've read that. That wasn't something I would do, but I bought a ton of codes through these services that would sell them for half price, and there'd be scans of the codes or the receipts from Walmart. And I was concerned with Flickster. I started reading Reddit, like Flickster is figured out who's doing this, and they are they've got an algorithm and they're going to find out, and they started removing content. And I read a ton of articles about people who would lose. I lost X, Y, and Z. And, you'd go back and they'd find out, I bought that off of a website because I bought the code or bought the code on eBay. I never lost the thing. And I will admit, I bought all of my codes from these places for the most part because I wasn't getting them. I wasn't buying physical stuff, right? And I did buy an awful lot from their store as well. I still do. But that crystallized it, right? That was the moment when you realized that you put something inside your account. You have a license to use it. You do not own it. And it is, you could kind of describe it. It's not tenuous because I think that that's being too dramatic, but there is a risk. And then you also had, what was the service? I should have wrote this down, but there was another service that died as well. That was it was the sort of the progenitor to Movies Anywhere that stored your copyright information.
I remember that vaguely.
But yeah, so did you ever have an experience like that where you bought something digitally and then you realized that you didn't own it because it disappeared?
Yeah, in video games, yes. Now, to be fair, I've never had that problem with music. I've never had that problem with movies. And I did use Vudu when it was under Walmart because I thought, well, if anybody's not going to go anywhere, it's Walmart. And so I would purchase movies on Vudu, or I'd rent them on Vudu or whatever. And then when the rumblings that Walmart was going to sell, I stopped immediately. And to this day, I don't like buying digital movies. I don't like, even through like Amazon or places like that. Now I'll stream all day long. And that's kind of where I've come out on movies. I mean, because at my peak, I think I had probably around 500 physical DVDs.
Wow.
And
far more than I ever had. I was 200.
Far more than anyone probably needs or should have. But hey, the DVD came out at the perfect time where I was full-time employed and single. And I had a blast with the DVD format. It was fantastic fun. But that's what I amassed, and that's what my wife had to stare at.
Yep. It is hideous, right? Unless you've got a nice shelf.
It was beautiful to me.
Yeah, I don't know. It's unlike books, which do have a certain
fair. Beauty. Yeah.
But by the way, the service I was thinking of is Ultraviolet.
Oh yes.
And that was a concern when that failed. All of a sudden, people were like, my rights were in Ultraviolet. Now, Ultraviolet wasn't a streaming, and that was the problem. And also, people realized how complicated this licensing situation was. And at that point, it certainly did feel tenuous. Like, is my stuff going to disappear? Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine. And Ultraviolet was a good piece of information. Brings back memories as well. But so it just got to the point where life could not contain 500 DVDs, and I still remember the day that I took them all to local used trade shop and cashed them in for whatever they'd give me for it. And that was when I went 100% digital with movies, with the rare exception of there's something I want to see now. It's not on any of the 6 million streaming services I subscribe to, and then I will hunt out a DVD or find some way to rent it online or whatever I have to do. So to this day, I own 15 Blu-rays maybe that fall into that category, that they're not anywhere else. So with my movies, I'm fine with it being a limited library. It's whatever Netflix is going to serve me, whatever Amazon Prime is going to serve me, that sort of thing. I do deeply wish that everybody could have come together in a kumbaya moment and said, look, Netflix runs this business.
Yep.
Let's just put everything on Netflix and let's work out the payment structure to where I'm only paying Netflix. But of course that can't happen because Disney has to make Disney Plus and Paramount has to make Paramount Plus.
It looked like something like that could have happened at one point. It felt like it, right from an outsider. I'm not in the industry, but it felt like Netflix was so powerful that,
and it was Disney that disrupted.
It was Disney.
Yeah,
it did.
Because
it did.
I think Netflix was that powerful, but Disney, when you hold that amount of copyrighted material, if you want to make your own streaming service, every parent in the universe is going to subscribe to it.
Yeah, and with the acquisition of both Star Wars and Marvel, at that point they had the content that really couldn't be beat. And but I think it was there is and is that lack of that central point of saying, which is what Ultraviolet was, right? Ultraviolet said you own this. So any video service that Dave owns Dune, Dave owns Night of the Living Dead, that's public domain. Everybody owns that, right? But so it kept track. It was like basically a database of what you owned, and then you logged into Vudu, you logged into Amazon Prime, and it would say, okay, Movies Anywhere replace that. You have a license for this, so we'll let you stream it. That was the idea. It was a rights license holder database, right? It said what you could borrow, so to speak, because there is limitations to that, right? And I think that certainly that when Flixster took over Vudu and people started to lose content, and there was risks of losing content with the ultraviolet loss. You could transfer it to, I remember I had to transfer a part of my library to a video provider of my choice, which was at the time, it still is Vudu, right? All the eggs are in that basket. But it's a real question mark, right? Are you concerned? And, I think for me, the answer is not really, because if I did lose access to, a third of my movies, I'd probably be really annoyed, and then I'd go on with my day, right? It's not so important.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because I feel the same way. I mean, with as big of movie guys as you and I are, it's like I'm okay with that being a more tenuous library than I am with my music or with my video games. Like, you try to take a CD from my collection and I'm gonna fight you for it. But if you take a movie from my collection, I'll be like, okay, well, I'll pick it up another day, or it'll show up on Amazon Prime eventually, or whatever.
So I own one CD. I have one CD left, and I bought it off eBay because it was The Killers. I'm holding it in my hand, folks, if you're listening. The Killers Pressure Machine CD. I love this album. I mean, I adore it. Just listen top to bottom. One of those, someday we'll have an episode where we talk about great songwriting, and this will absolutely be on there. But I bought it because it came with, and I'm going to point at it, ladies and gentlemen, it came with a Brandon Flowers autograph, because they did this CD during the pandemic.
Yes.
And it turned out brilliantly. I don't know, how they did all of the logistics. I'd imagine it'd be quite difficult. But that's the only one I own, and I've never played it. And I don't. Well, yeah, I guess I could. In my car.
Copy of the Pressure Machine did not come with the Brandon Flowers.
They had. You didn't. No. You could get them, and you bought it, and it had somebody's signature and one of the band members. And I wanted Brandon Flowers, so I ordered it off eBay, and and I got that. I hung it on my wall. I'm very proud of it. I think an awful lot of the guys. So. But it's the only one I own. And we own some physical movies because our van, we have little kids, folks. I mean, Chris and I talk about being middle-aged, and we are, Chris is beyond that little kid point. I have little kids. I have a 5-year-old and 8-year-old. I also have one granddaughter and another one on the way. So we have in our minivan, we have a DVD player. It's a 2017. And I kept asking the salesman, do you have one with a Blu-ray player? And he's like confused. I'm like, wait, you go home. You are not watching DVDs. There's a really good chance you're watching Blu-rays. Please tell me that one of these, and they did not have any Dodge Caravans on the lot that had a Blu-ray player. So we bought the car anyways. I mean, we needed it. We had another baby on the way. So, but we do have a bunch of Bubble Guppies, Peppa Pig, SpongeBob, a ton of old SpongeBob, the same ones that my daughter watched, 15, my son and daughter watched 15, 13 years ago. We do have a little bit of physical media there. We did try it has an HDMI port. We tried the whole Apple moving the video over with the Dodge system. I'm sure that anybody listening that's had a Dodge, the whole Uconnect thing for video is unpleasant. We just gave up because half the time it was just us messing with it and it not working. And we just said, okay, we'll just put it in DVD.
Sure.
But yeah, so we have a little bit of physical media. So I think we're, music, obviously you and I are worlds apart there. And I think it becomes apparent that you value the physical media more than I do there. For movies, we're actually pretty close. And I think that we're both we could live with it. And there's so much that I own now that is also on a streaming service. And I'll find myself watching, I recently rewatched the Godfather movies.
Right.
And, I did not watch them from my account on Vudu. I watched them on Paramount Plus.
Yeah.
But mostly because I wanted to watch Godfather Coda. And I didn't know that. I had it on Paramount Plus. No, it still sucked.
I've done the exact same thing where there's a movie I want to watch and it's within arm's reach, but it's not on streaming. And I'm like, forget it. I'll watch something else.
And so I'll go beyond that and see with you. We've totally cut the cord. We have everything. We have a good internet service. We live in a fairly rural area. You live on the outskirts of the town. We live in a Midwest town. Say it's Springfield, Missouri, right? You say, where's Springfield, Missouri? Well, it's the home of Bass Pro, Brad Pitt, and we're
if there's a bright center of the universe, it's the city that is farthest from.
I have a great fondness for our area of the country, but
I kid.
I know. It's also the home of cashew chicken.
True.
But it's you live on the sort of the edge of that city. I live in a rural city. It's called Ozark, Missouri, which people they're saying, oh, those are the Ozarks. And then yes, they say the city's definitely. So no, that's Camdenton. It's Lake Osage Beach, Lake of the Ozarks. That's about an hour and a half away. That's fake Ozarks. We're real Ozarks. So I live in a city called Ozark, Missouri, but we have awesome internet here. My internet is very stable. I work from home. It has to. All of our entertainment comes from there, and we cut the cord. Everything, no cable, no satellite, just internet, and half a dozen subscriptions that we have, and then a half a dozen we've borrowed, like many people do, right? That's coming to an end for some things, right? Netflix is cutting that out. Oh, I could care less because I'm not going to pay for Netflix anymore. There's nothing on there I want to watch, but everything is now digital, right? So I think you're also
we've completely cut the cord as well. I'm unfortunately in the situation where I'm always the one paying and people are borrowing from me.
I got some of that. And I don't mind. Do you have like a cable analog, so like a YouTube TV or a Hulu Live?
No.
Okay, no, I do. There's a specific show I watch, and it's only available on one of those cable analogs.
That's blowing my mind that there's still one out there that doesn't exist elsewhere.
Yes, it's called On Patrol Live. It's the old Live PD. I don't know if you ever heard of it. They had where the officers follow people. It's kind of like cops.
Okay.
And so I signed up for the least expensive cable analog version. I'm using analog here. That's a really confusing word to use. It's like cable TV. I think you're all smart. But it's confusing, right? I got the analog digital version. What are you talking about? It's called Philo. It's a really good service.
That did trip me up the first time you said it. I'll be honest.
I was trying to use one of those $5 words,
but you did use it correctly.
I did. The real risk for me is pronouncing those words correctly, because you read them and you try to build your vocabulary. You read a lot of fancy words, and then no one ever uses them around you.
Right.
You sound like a moron talking about the things that are going on.
I'm gonna grab you by the lapels.
Yeah.
Doesn't work.
Hyperbole.
Oh.
No one ever used the word hyperbole, and so I called it hyperboil, right. Which is not. That's a really dangerous medical condition. Hyperboil is. But so, anyways, cut the cord. Everything's digital. We're close on that. Here's one that I think you and I though are we'll part ways. We may have to close down the podcast. Is how you read your books.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that.
And like a reader, did you ever own a Kindle? Do you read on your phone?
So I love paper books. And 98% of my reading is paper book. I do own a Kindle. I do think it's a marvelous piece of technology. And I think it has its place. That place being on airplanes, and if you just cannot find a book any other way, which I've used it for both. There's something I desperately want to read, it's out of print or it's just ridiculously hard to find or stupidly expensive. I can get the ebook for $6. No question. I'm going to get the ebook. I have no problem using a Kindle. I just prefer the paper book.
I love paper books, and I like the smell of a used bookstore
absolutely.
And the tactile feel of a book. And I own about 9 of them, and they're above your head. I think 8 of them are Bibles.
Okay.
So I get it, but the convenience factor overrides all those things. And if I'm able to get a book in a minute, right? Oh, hey, a good friend of ours, a gentleman recommended a book to me, and I looked it up. Like, I want to buy that, and then I bought it.
Yeah, and that
was it.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And,
So my problem with the physical book is storage. That's a huge challenge, even in my home, because my wife is also a huge paper book fan. And I swear, you remember the book rack which was
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
it was a used bookstore.
Yeah. The risk of dying because the bookshelves fell in on you was real.
So I'm not kidding. This guy had a used bookstore. It was phenomenal. It was a maze, and I mean, stacks upon stacks upon stacks of books in front of other stacks of books. And he would go through this maze, and his little cash register would be completely surrounded by stacks of books, and he would just be sitting there, kindest guy in the world. If you asked him if he had a book, he would shove his arm into a pile of books waist high, and he would pull out the book that you were looking for. I don't know how he did it, but he had the catalog system. But if I'm not careful, that's my office.
Yeah.
And I've got stacks of books everywhere. And you can't have that in a home.
Nope. It's a fire hazard. I mean, yeah, we used to joke when we go to that. We used to joke when we go to that bookstore that he's gonna we're gonna go in there and he's gonna be dead because the books fell. And it could have happened to us. Do you remember us going into that bookstore? A little aside. And you listeners, you can think, what's the dumbest books you've ever bought? And buying Twin Peaks fiction.
I do remember.
At the time, they did, they had the Twin Peaks show, and they thought, well, let's write some books like Dale Cooper's diary or whatever.
And the Diary of Laura Palmer.
Diary of Laura Palmer. It's a Dale Cooper's notes or something to Diane.
To Diane, yeah.
And we ate that stuff up.
So not only did we go in there and buy that, but he had them.
Right, and that's it. That was the point. Is he had everything. Yeah. But here's what and you're right. The experience, and I went into it, we have a little bookstore, and I enjoyed it. I ended up not buying. I think I don't know. I think I may have bought a copy of a comic book, The Watchmen. I mean, that sounds ridiculous. You can have everything that guy had in your pocket on your phone now, right? Yep. It's great. But it's also like you miss that experience.
You do. But it is great. And I have absolutely no problem with ebooks. I have no problem with Kindle. If I did have a problem, it's that it replaced the mass market paperback, which was my favorite size of book.
Yes.
But that's my only complaint. And my wife and I were talking just the other day, and because my son was cleaning his room and he found a Kindle that had been smashed to pieces. And we were both lamenting the loss of this Kindle. And I turned to my wife and I said, can you imagine when we were kids if someone handed us a Kindle?
Yeah.
And she was like, you're absolutely right. Because it's the world at your fingertips.
It is.
And it's, and it's an amazing thing. So I'm pro Kindle, but I do love the book.
I love Kindles. I love the Paperwhites. I think they're brilliant. But when my wife had our last child, I was up there and I couldn't sleep and I did not have my Kindle with me. So I just downloaded the app, and then I realized I may love my Paperwhite, and I did. And I don't know where it's at. It may still be in the house here, but this works just fine. And that was like on an iPhone 4. I mean, or no, it wasn't. It was probably a 6 at the time. I'm kind of joking, but I
read Neil Stephenson's Cryptonomicon, which is an incredibly large book.
Yes.
I read it on my
Mr. Stephenson is, I've got a grudge against him.
That's fair. But I read that on my phone, and that was my test. It was like, could I do this on a phone screen? And so I read, a 1,000-page book and decided, no, I'm going to draw the line there. I even don't like reading on my iPad. Because it's something with my eyes. The Kindle screen is much nicer.
That's bizarre that you would say that, because I cannot read on my iPad either. But I can on a phone, and particularly a phone with an OLED screen that's super crisp. I can
that
make
is
that
an experience
work.
I've not had.
Because earlier you talked about having a Pixel 4a. I am one of those people who has to have the latest phone. I will admit, right? It is a thing for me. I work in technology. I am not a great technologist, but I want to look like I play the part, and I have to have the latest thing. And I recently switched to Android, and I have a Kindle. Excuse me, I have a Kindle phone. I can't get it to make a phone call. Holding this giant e-reader up to my ear. It's I with that OLED screen, the crispness, I have no problem with it at all.
Interesting.
But it's I do remember reading on the older iPhones, and it was a strain on your eyes. I had good vision, but I don't know. I wonder if there's a connection. But I love that the whole thing is in your pocket. Yes. And it is, it opens up things, and I can read stuff, and I can get samples from Amazon, and it's kind of like the experience of browsing through a library. But I do miss that, right? We, I don't know. Do you remember, Chris, in our town, we had the main
Oh
library.
yes, I love
And
that.
it was like an old building, and it
Mhm.
was drafty,
Yeah,
and
it was exactly like the opening of Ghostbusters.
it was like that in a yeah. It just it had that feel, right? And then they remodeled it and it ruined it.
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
they should have just knocked it down. If they were going to do what they did, they took all the character out of it.
Yep.
But I missed that gigantic library and finding that gem of a book. And, I'm going to get that book on Masons, and I'm going to learn all the Mason secrets for a while. I really thought I could crack the code. And I realized there's no code. They just hang out and do charitable events.
Yes.
And the Shriners, because I was like, oh, I'm going to figure that out. And that came from the library. I was interested, right? And that digital wandering still exists, right? I'm trying to make it as meaningful,
Right.
but recently I tried to do it, and I ended up watching a Yoko Ono video, and so it tells you where the digital. I never had that problem of watching Yoko Ono scream in a library and call that music. But it is you can still find that experience in the digital world. It just loses. I think it loses something. I think the big thing it loses is just that the smell of a bookstore. There's
Right.
something to it. People are gonna, I probably should see a doctor. I have some issues, but there is something there, and I think our listeners, man, they've got to. If you've ever been in a used bookstore or an old library, there's something to it.
Yes.
It's magical.
And I'll say this. To me, it's happenstance. Like a random discovery is very difficult for me to do online because it's all aggregated. It's all like, well, this is going to direct you here. This is going to direct you here. Whereas in a physical place, a library, a bookstore, who knows what book got put in the wrong place by somebody who was too tired to do their job. And then suddenly you find it and it completely changes your worldview.
Yep.
I mean, to me, that's the magic.
And now there's, like, I don't want to sound conspiratorial, but there's the algorithms, right?
Mm-hmm.
That can lead you in certain places that maybe you didn't get to organically, like in the library. Yeah, very, very good point. So way different on books, right? And I get it. I will ask you this: you mentioned finding the Kindle. Have you ever lost a book and you knew you had it in your house, and then you that feeling of relief when you found it?
Oh yes, absolutely. And I've also lost the book because I loaned it to somebody, and
yeah, sorry about that.
Well, I wasn't going to name you specifically, but I was going to let everyone listening know that I know exactly who you are and what book you have, and I've forgiven you. But
you would like that book back. I borrowed a copy of Guns, Germs, and Steel from. I don't know if you're familiar with that book. It's a book about sort of the evolution of societies, mm-hmm. right, and how guns, germs, and steel changed the world. And I still think I still have it. I borrowed it like 20 years ago. I will say the weirdest situation where I lost a beautiful, beautiful book was I had a copy of the Dune Encyclopedia. If you remember that book, it was the unlicensed history of Dune that was written in the late 70s.
I do remember that.
And it was this gigantic book, right? And it was wonderful. You can open it up, and if you love Dune, so the Dune universe created Frank Herbert, extremely nerdy, very fun. I had it. And this big, beautiful book. And one day it went missing. And I thought, man, I took it on a work trip with me, and I thought I left it in a hotel room. Somebody got a really neat Dune encyclopedia. And one day my wife, I come home and she's, kind of rearranging the kitchen, and I see my Dune encyclopedia on the kitchen counter. I'm like, oh my gosh, where did you find this? And she said, oh, I had it up on the top of the cabinets holding up. There was a plant that needed to be lifted up so it could be seen on the cabinet. And she had taken my beautiful Dune encyclopedia and done that. I turned it around and sold it on eBay for $60.
Oh, wow.
Because I was like, I didn't, at that point, I'd been without it long enough.
Sure.
But it was like, oh, wow, but I tell that story, it's funny, but I also tell that story, she knew that I had all of my books digitally. And she just like, oh, well, he's not going to need this.
Right.
Not realizing that book was far out of print, and I don't think it's available digitally. She, not her fault, but she had really just assumed, and rightfully so, that I have very few tactile books. I have a few books on video games that have beautiful pictures and beautiful art. That I do keep, and I love their hardback. And then, we have some religious books and some Bibles and some other things that are meaningful to us. But yeah, very different on books. But I think this will be a much easier one. We'll do it pretty fast. Photos.
Yeah, I'm fine with digital photos.
Yeah. You have to be.
Yeah.
You have to be nowadays.
I still have, and she's going to listen to this, and maybe she'll find some solace in the fact that I still have them. But I have all of my mother's old pictures that I took under the guise of I'm going to scan these, and that was like 7 years ago. And they have not been scanned yet, but I do still have them. They're safe. And someday we'll get those all scanned and get them uploaded to cloud storage so that everybody can enjoy them.
Yeah, well, all the kids are talking about it.
Yeah, well,
it's the big thing now.
That's right. So yeah, photos. And honestly, that one was kind of taken from me, because if I could still shoot film, I would, because the whole darkroom experience, I really enjoy that as a hobby. But
you and Christopher Nolan,
well,
and stick with the film.
He's
right though. There was a difference. There's a story I'll tell another episode about that. He's right.
He is right. So if film still existed, and there are people out there that's like, oh, you can still buy film. It's like, yeah, but it's dying. I mean, we're running out of it, and nobody's making more. If it still existed, I would love to continue to shoot film. But since the industry made that choice for me, I give up. Yeah, I have a digital camera. Yeah, it all gets uploaded. Fine.
Though, you hear about those stories, like, there's all those lost movies, right? Because the celluloid or celluloid, I said it right.
Yep,
it burned in a fire because it became brittle and flammable. And, we don't have those risks now. I mean, because it is digitized and it's generally safe. Or is it?
Well, okay, but then you have the problem, like they released the Star Wars prequels in 4K. And I'm like, that's fine, but those were shot with 1080p cameras.
Right. Yeah, and so it doesn't really, no, you're right. And that was the big argument against digital in the early days, is that on film you have a nearly unlimited amount of depth. The bit depth, though, you're limited.
The 4K version of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is one of the most stunning things I've ever seen in my life, and that came because it was originally shot on film.
Yep, and it's a very good point. But the idea of film preservation is going to change dramatically. Mm-hmm. And I don't even know what it becomes at this point in the digital world. But that risk, right, it doesn't exist, right? You don't have a fire at one of the studios, and all of a sudden there's 30 lost films.
Right. Yeah. No, eventually, there'll be some film out there that somebody finds an appreciation for, and it'll be like, we found one guy in Oklahoma that had a Blu-ray. And now that's what we were able to make a master of.
Yes,
that's all we had.
At a garage sale, it was found, and we pieced it together, and now we found that lost Ed Wood movie.
Ooh!
And I've read stuff about people buying that stuff in garage, buying film, like a film reel. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, they realize this is something people have been looking for. There's all kinds of stories that you can read about that. The lost films.
Yeah. And the good thing is Hollywood is one of the few industries that actually cares about that, and they do take effort to preserve. There are other industries that don't. Like, video game preservation is in shambles. It's horrible.
Yes. So let's go to video games. So you've mentioned your video games, losing them, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm all digital on them, right? I think folks are probably seeing the pattern. I don't want a piece of paper in my life or a piece of media unless it is extremely meaningful, right? Yeah. Video games, I own one video game for my my Switch. And I just keep it in there. It's a new Super Mario Bros. I just keep it in there, and then all the rest of them are digital. Yeah.
So I have been burned by the digital video game thing. And I didn't like it. I didn't like the way it tasted. I also like the fact that my cartridge of Super Mario Bros. 3 is never going to receive an over-the-air update.
Yeah, it never changed.
It is the game.
Yes.
So I am diehard physical when it comes to video games, with the exception of Steam. I have quite an extensive Steam library, because any PC gamer, that's the only option you have, really. Now the difference for me is Valve has publicly said we're not going anywhere. And if something should happen that we don't expect, and we are going to go somewhere, we will publicize it, and we will give everybody time to download their Steam library. And I appreciate that. Now, what I don't see is Nintendo, Sony, or Microsoft saying the same thing.
Nope. Nintendo recently was shutting down. I think they actually suspended shutting down the eShop, but yeah, and those games will be lost, right? eShop exclusives, unless they're pirated, they will be gone, right? So you're actually encouraged. Nintendo, listen, I know Bowser's listening. Not the Mario character,
No,
but the
the
president of
president.
Nintendo America. He's listening. Doug Bowser.
Yes.
Listen, Dougie. You're encouraging piracy. The thing
Yes.
that you hate and that you crack down. You put fear into legitimate lovers of your work specifically, because no one has. I love Nintendo
Yes.
as much as anybody, right? That's my thing, my jam. But I know that all these Switch games that I bought, when you come out with the next thing, it's no longer the Switch, right? It's something else. They're probably not going to work, and I'm just going to have to be stuck on that Switch if I want to enjoy it. But so the bad business decisions encourage the gray and black markets of this world.
You're exactly right, and virtually the only video game preservation that has happened has been in the gray areas.
It is that archive.org.
Right, and including the NES, the NES Mini, and the SNES Mini. Some of those ROMs you can trace back to the ROMs that are online that you can download anywhere. And so
really?
Yes.
So they pirated
Nintendo downloaded the ROMs that are online instead of dumping their own cartridge.
I hope they sue themselves into oblivion.
So it's, and I don't, a friend of mine, we joke, it's not piracy, it's preservation. Okay, well, that joke will take you only so far.
Right.
So I don't condone piracy. I'm not okay with piracy. Do I have ROMs? Yes, I do. But it is a very gray area because of this problem. Because Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony, the big three,
it's the only way to get them.
They won't do it any other way. And that's very frustrating.
And you are not stealing from someone if there's no way, if they can't make money off of it any other way. I don't know. I mean, I've struggled with this, right? Because
I do too.
I recognize that piracy is a crime, right?
Sure.
If it's a crime, and it's not otherwise violating your conscience, then it's a sin, right? It violates, right? So I phrased that poorly, but it's a bad thing to do, right? So right. I don't do it, but I do have ROMs and things like that, right? Sorry, Doug. But if they made it just like with the movies, if they made it more convenient, if they had the ROM service and charged me 99 cents, and Nintendo was the virtual console that they did, they had it right. And why the Switch didn't continue to do that, it was a terrible mistake.
I have this theory that Nintendo just hates money.
Well, I think that Nintendo is quite anti-consumer, whether they like it or whether they know it or not, right? And their walled garden is the walls are higher and it's more narrow than even what Apple has.
I would agree. Yeah. But I will say this conversation is happening at a very interesting moment in the video game space, because just this week, in my opinion, physical video games were killed. And I say that because of the release of Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Did you read about this?
No, I didn't. I knew it came out, but I didn't read any of the articles.
Even if you buy the physical edition, you have to download an additional 150 gigabytes of game data. So
that if you have an Xbox Series S with 500 gig, built-in SSD storage,
over 1/5 of your storage is going to be eaten up by this game. And also, if you buy the disc, all that disc is a license.
It's a license. That's all it is.
Yeah. And so I read that article and I was like, well, that's the end of that. It's over. And I knew it was going to be coming. I'm pretty sure the PlayStation 6 and the Xbox Micro Series S, X, Y, whatever they call it. I'm pretty sure those are going to be download only consoles. It would not surprise me at all.
Yeah.
And that's a shame. And I used to console myself by saying, well, there's a whole history of video games that I can continue to collect and my life will be just fine. But now with COVID, those have been priced out of accessibility.
Yep.
And so now I'm just really sad.
Well, so one last thing I was going to ask about, and I think it all ties into the whole thing, right? I think I embrace the digital life. What about like finances, taxes?
Now that kind of stuff, digital 100%.
100%. I do have the studio, and I tell you what, when we go full on social media, I might do a tour of the studio.
That'd be fun.
Like sort of like an MTV Cribs, but for podcasters. I have a file cabinet, right? And there's the only paper in there is blank paper for when our daughter wants us to print out a coloring sheet from the internet. It's all digital. And you know what? The funny thing is we stress out about whether or not we're going to lose their movies. By putting the financial information online, we might lose our identities.
Yeah, but that I'm not concerned about at all.
Cool. I'm cool. Do I still have Super Mario Brothers?
Exactly.
Yeah. No, it's interesting, right? Like it's not. I think it shows the faith that we we put into it. I recently read an article about there is a particularly large design flaw in Apple security where if people find out your password and swipe your phone, they can lock you out of your iCloud, like lock it out of your iCloud. Right. And Apple doesn't have a good way to get you back into your iCloud because your phone sort of becomes the physical key to that, right? And when they own that, and this social engineering they're doing is they're going to bars, watching people get particularly drunk, looking over their shoulder, seeing what their PIN is, and then they set the phone down, they grab the phone, and then they're out. And it's happening a lot. And then they're able, once they do that, they're able to do this thing that like this registration key. But the bottom line is that there is a risk of, you put all your eggs. We talked about eggs in one basket with Voodoo. Digitally, you're putting all those eggs in there too. And does it really scare me? No, it doesn't. For one thing, I'm pretty darn careful. I mean, I don't go out. I don't put my phone down.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not getting drunk every night.
The worst thing is I was at Walmart one day and I was listening with my AirPods in when I had an Apple product, and I had my phone in the cart and wouldn't use the restroom, and and I realized, I don't have my phone. It's still out there. It was fine. It was out there. Actually, one of the employees noticed that I had the phone there, took the cart and put it by them and stood by it.
Wow.
And where they were working, and they came out and didn't see the cart, and then I noticed it, and she said, "Hey, I realized you did that." But otherwise, I'm particularly careful with it, so I don't have a whole lot of worries.
Yeah, no, I mean, you pick your institution, you pick who you're going to bank with. Hopefully you get to pick who your healthcare provider is with, or your insurance picks that for you.
Yeah, it's picked for you.
Then you don't have a choice. And you hope that they have decent security.
Yep.
And I've been lucky in the people that I do business with. I've been very pleased with their online offering, and they have two-factor authentication, and so it is as safe as can be. And I've received the dreaded email where it's like, oh, our system was hacked and 1 billion passwords, including yours, were downloaded. And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, what are the odds that out of the billion passwords, they're going to pick me? Yep. And if they do pick me and look at my bank account, they're going to be like, we need to help this guy out.
I know.
We don't need to steal from him.
Yeah, they're going to be so disappointed.
I'm comfortable with that. And honestly, an example of something that is not digital, my car titles, right? That's in a lockbox in my closet, and that stresses me out. Yeah. Like the idea
I can lose it.
Yes.
Yeah. And I got to apply for a lost title.
Right.
But if it was digital, right?
I'd feel so much better.
Well, folks, I think, wrapping it up, my goodness, think about this, right? And here's the thing. There's going to come a point where we don't have a choice. And I think that we're realizing that, right? This is a conversation between two dinosaurs in the sense that this is a dying thing, physical media, and it will become about collecting and like admiring it like a piece of art, more so than something with function. And but I think it's an interesting because it's a painful in laborious transition for some of us as we realize that there's work in it. And it's a change. I think it's overall a positive change. I've embraced it more than you have, but I think we both, it was more common ground here than I expected.
Okay.
I think
that's fair.
Which is cool. But certainly on books, that's the big one, right?
Yeah.
Example, my wife has put a beloved book, the tome, the Dune Encyclopedia, holding up a plant on top of a kitchen cabinet in a real way that I can't get to. She thought that was very funny, so did I.
Well, and in my home, it's like, kid, get out of here. We need room for the books.
Yeah, it's sleep in the garage. Otherwise, the books might die. You might die from the books falling on you, like that poor guy at the bookstore. So I think that anyone who is in this position, right, particularly if you're our age, having lived through entirely physical and the novelty of digital, and then the reality that it's no longer a novelty.
Yeah, no, and that's a good point. And we are going long and we do need to wrap this up, but that's something we didn't even talk about. My kids' relationship to this conversation, completely
totally different.
Yeah.
This is two dinosaurs trying to work it out. Wait, I just figured out we changed our name to that. We might get little kids to listen. Oh, okay. Well, folks, thank you for listening. I had a great time, Chris.
Absolutely. I did too.
All right. Have a good, everybody. Oh, we should probably edit this out.
Okay.
No, we should probably edit my closing. That was what we call a fake close, right? What's that in a false ending? Movies. You know that stuff better than me.
Like a Shyamalan twist kind of thing.
Yes, yeah. This is the post-credit scene here. Hey, everybody, go to our website. www. Are you supposed to say that anymore?
I don't think so.
Oh boy. To the number 2, the numeral 2, not TOO, not TWO, not TO even. To the number middleageguys.com. Go to our website, send us an email. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to, the good, the bad, give us an idea, maybe something that, you're thinking about a topic and you'd like to hear us kind of, dissect it and goof around with it. We'd love to hear from our listener. Plural? No, plural, not singular. Plural, listeners. We'd love to hear from you folks. And thank you so much. Have a good night.
Take care.